Now let me welcome on to our ACC preview podcast, the legend, Wake Forest's own Randolph Childress, and also my partner in crime, the one Terrence Oglesby, who is now the third best shooter on this show. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Third best shooter, that hurts, man. That hurts. I'm at least second.
The truth hurts sometimes.
I don't do this often, but just because the legend Randolph Childress is here, I wore a black polo, and I don't ever do that because. And I was thinking about it. Your move against Carolina in the ACC tournament, if that would have happened today, that would have been like that. Like the kid would have had to go to therapy. Like it would have been a big deal. It would have gone viral. Everybody would have been talking. But man, it's an honor to be on here with you. I appreciated chatting with you beforehand, and you had a heck of a.
No, guys, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. But listen, Rob said, he didn't say he was a better percentage shooter. He said he just shoots it, but he shoots it a lot more. So if it goes in, it goes in. So we may have to figure that one out.
I will definitely get more attempts up. So this is the ACC preview show that we're doing. It's going to be pretty standard, pretty basic. We're just kind of rolling through the best teams in the conference. We will have our power rankings, and we'll have our preseason player of the year and all conference teams later on in the show. But there are some really kind of important storylines that we have to get to in the ACC this season, none of which is bigger than Coach K's final season as the head coach at Duke. Randolph, let me start you off with this. You played in the ACC, you've coached in the ACC, you've gone up against Coach K before. What are you expecting out of him this final season? And is this the kind of thing where those guys are going to fight harder for him just to make sure he gets that last regular season title on his way out the door?
They're talented enough to make a run at this thing. I think they have more depth and talent, more balanced team than they've had in a while. But let's be honest, it's going to be a distraction. Everywhere that it's going to be a farewell tour. With him making the announcement as early as he did. There's going to be that, everyone is going to pay their respects, and how much of a distraction will that be to him and his players? It's almost like Tom Brady the other night. So much been made of that. You can't tell me he didn't have a lot of emotion doing that. So as the year bears on, that would be the only thing, barring an injury that I think that slows that team down.
Yeah, that's interesting, Terrence. I'm curious your opinion on that. So I understand kind of why he did it as early as he did. He wanted to make sure that the guys that he's recruiting are going to understand that he's not going to be there. It's going to be Coach Shire on the show. Are you okay with him kind of going out there and making this announcement as early as he did and kind of setting it up where it's going to be the Coach K farewell tour everywhere he goes on the road this season?
Well, the guy's been there for 40 years and won how many national championships? I think he deserves to do whatever the hell he wants to do. I mean, I think that's first and foremost. I'm actually okay with it. I think John was doing the bulk of the recruiting anyway. I mean, every summer, Coach K during the spring recruiting period, he would basically sit out that portion and just go out in July. So his staff was doing a lot of the stuff anyway, and that's fine.
Right.
John obviously is a proven recruiter. He just continues to get guys. His class coming in for 2021 or 2022, I can't the numbers, who knows, but they are obviously excellent. And like Sir Childress said, like this team is going to be loaded. There's going to be a lot of guys around. I question more than anything, is there going to be enough shooting around Paolo Banchero? I think Trevor Keels is a freshman. He's going to have to adjust. He's an excellent shooter, but at the same time, he's 6'4", 225 pounds. That's a lot to carry around if he's going to be a heavy minute guy. I'm interested to see that. And Joey Baker's going to have a better year than he's had since he's arrived on campus. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics. I think there's one big difference between this year and the past few years with Coach K, and that's the fact that since he decided he was going to step away, he actually got to stay with his team the entire summer and run all the practices. So he has a more hands-on approach than what he's had recently, especially in the COVID year when there was no summer. So I think there's the learning curve for a lot of these freshmen is going to be a lot different, and they're going to be a lot further along come November than they were this time last year.
Where do you stand on the shooting issue, Randolph? Because I do think that's probably going to end up being the biggest thing, right? You have all these great big guys. You didn't mention Mark Williams. You got Theo Johns transferring, and even a guy like AJ Griffin and Wendell Moore are big for their positions and aren't necessarily the greatest shooters. So how do you kind of balance getting your five best players on the floor while also making sure that you have enough people out there that can create the space where those best players are going to be able to do what they do best?
I wonder how they're going to play. When we talk about that, will Banchero play the 4? Will he play the 5? Will they go small ball, or are they going to play big and play him and Mark together? But shooting, I think, a lot of pressure going to be on Jeremy Roach. I mean, he's going to have to step up this year. He was up and down as a freshman. He's a good shooter. And I think Kill is Trevor is a great shooter as well. He is a bigger body guard, but he's done that throughout his career. They're high school teammates. I think, again, you can't stress what you just said about having a summer to work with those guys. I think it'll be fine. I think they have enough shooting to win. Will they have some all nights? They will, but they're going to be so strong inside, and they're just going to be better than 90% of the teams and more talented that they step up and they play against on a night in and night out basis. So to win a championship, they'll need Joey Baker to play better. AJ Griffin's going to need to knock down some shots, but that's to win a national championship. To compete in the ACC, I just think they're too talented not to be one of the top 2 teams in the league.
I think a big difference this year is Jeremy Roach is going to have the ball in his hands. Whenever he was in high school, he was this pick and roll guy who facilitated offense, and he felt like he was really a part. Last year, they kind of had a hodgepodge of guys that would bring the ball up. Wendell Moore would take some time to bring the ball up. Goldwire kind of cluttered that stuff. Now, Goldwire was a great player for what they did, right. But I think, I was a rhythm guy. I wasn't a guy like Randolph Childress who could just all of a sudden just turn it on whenever he would. I had to be part of the game. Like, I had to catch it a couple times, move the ball, kind of cut hard to kind of understand the flow of the game in order for me to be successful. And I think Roach kind of fell victim to that last year because he kind of played more off the ball than what I think he preferred. Not that what he prefers matters to Coach K, but I think you're going to get a better product from him. And I think Wendell Moore, after those first 11 games, I thought he was really good. And, the problem was he came in as a 5-star kid and everybody thought, well, he's going to average 15 to 17 points a game. And that's not really his game. For him to have a really good year, he needs to hit shots at about a 35% clip, be their best defender, and kind of be a ball movement guy. I'd like to compare him to a college version of Andre Iguodala, because if he can be that for Duke, along with Paolo Banchero, if Jeremy Roach shoots it better, if Trevor Keels comes in and makes shots, it's going to be a formidable team. Like if those guys hit shots, I think that's what it comes down to more than anything. I think Roach is going to. I think Keels is going to. It's just a matter. I think Baker needs to take that next step.
Yeah, I think
to counter your point, though, I think that's why they're going to put the ball in Wendell Moore's hand. They're going to need more perimeter shooting, and I think, fair or not, I think they're going to move Roach off the ball some, just like they did last year. He'll just be more equipped to handle it because he played a lot last year. But I think they like the option because if not, Wendell, unless he improves his jump shot drastically, you're just going to back off and clog the paint up a little bit on him, allow him to do that. Now, if he has the ball at the top, you're not going to leave Roach, or you're not going to leave Kill on the wing to shoot. You're going to guard those guys. So I still think you'll see some of that, but I think you'll start out the games with the ball in Roach's hand.
One thing that I think will be interesting, and T.O., you made this point on our show a couple of weeks ago, is that I think we're going to see a little bit of a throwback defensive kind of a team, right? When Duke was at their best in the 2000s and maybe even the early 2010s, you got those teams where you had bigger, more physical athletes on the floor, and they get out and they pressure you and they overplay passing lanes, and they would just basically dare you to try to beat them one-on-one. And they said, our defenders are going to be better than your guys with the ball in their hands. You're never going to beat us one-on-one. And that's how they ended up winning games defensively. I think with some of the guys they have on this roster, we're going to see a little bit more of that this season. And we really haven't gotten that as much in the last couple of years from Coach K. So that's the one thing that I'm really intrigued to see this team. And also, we kind of glossed over it a little bit. Paolo was special, man. Like, that dude is really, really good. Randolph, you recruited this, didn't recruit him, but you were on the recruiting trail when he was out there. What are you expecting out of him this season, and just how good is this kid?
I think he's special. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He stays healthy. He's done. I think he's one and done. I think the most dangerous lineup they're going to have is, like I alluded to before, what are you going to do when they put him at the 5?
Good luck.
Like that's the matchup. I think they'll play Mark Williams kind of like they played Vernon Carey a little bit. He played, when they played him, they featured him a lot, and then they took him out. He didn't play, as good as Vernon was, he didn't play 25, 30 minutes. He was like a 15 to 17-minute guy in conference play. They just kind of fed him when he was there, made him a vocal point, then they took him out. But when they put him at the 5, I don't know how you're going to guard him at that point. I just think he's a special talent, and he's I'm not going to, say he's the Zion, he's not that effect yet, but he's a talented kid, and I think he's definitely freshman of the year, potential player of the year in the conference.
Some of the film that's coming out of Duke's camp where he's coming off 4 or 5 pick and rolls, Randolph, like and then he's seeing the second line of defense and making a skip pass across his body. Like Zion wasn't doing that.
No,
like I would make an argument that Paolo's a better player. He's not going to be as dominant. Does that make it like he's probably more skilled? He's not going to be as dominant.
I'll say this. I thought that was an underrated skill set of Zion. I thought he was a great passer. Like, people didn't give him credit for it because they were so anemic with his dunks and what, he's anticipating the moves around the rim and the physical presence that he brought about it. He is more skilled. And I think, like you said, the 4 and 5 pick and roll, they ran some of that with Zion and those guys. But again, when they go small ball and put him at the 5, and you're going to try to go small ball with him, good luck with that. He's going to be a matchup nightmare. I don't know how many teams is just going to have an answer for him. He's a special talent.
Is it even small ball? He's 6'10", 260.
That's what I'm saying for him. But think about it. He's good enough to play the 4. Like, that's the thing about their team when I say before. He's going to play, they're going to be able to put a 6'10" guy in, an athletic 7-footer there as well. So they're going to be able to play match up. I don't know how many teams are going to be able to match up with him. I think UNC could with Armando, but there's not many teams he's going to be a problem where you're going to go really big. He's going to punish you inside, put you in foul trouble. And then if, pick on your 5 men. And then when he goes, like I said, it's hard to call a kid. It's 240, 245 small ball. But when he plays the 5 and you match up a traditional center on him, you got no chance.
All right. So you mentioned.
I want to revert back a little bit to what you said, Rob, about them being defensively dominant like they were in the early 2000s. Yeah. I think that's going to be a big thing because Coach K had them all summer. I think there's not going to be any more I'm going to smack the floor and play 2-3. Like, I think this Duke team has the length and ability with Wendell Moore on the perimeter. He's got a 7-foot something wingspan. With Paolo, who's 6'10", 260, he's so physically gifted. He's going to be able to get out there and deny some passes. And then you have a really good rim protector in Mark Williams. Physically gifted is this Duke team. And it almost goes back. I think Florida State could match up. Florida State, North Carolina, from a size perspective, could match up. But the talent level in Durham is different this year.
It's different. It's definitely different. And that's why Roach didn't play early in the year. He didn't defend. Goldwire competed defensively, and he sat and he came on strong as the year went on because he started competing on the defensive end, being a good on-ball defender. But when you add, more and then you put A.J. Griffin's athleticism out there, they're going to be back to getting in the passing lanes, guarding the ball, and speeding you up and turning you over, and good luck with that.
Before we move on, let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at BetRivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up for BetRivers yet, now is the time because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, it's more secure, and it's more reliable. Now that basketball season is tipping off, get in on the action at betrivers.com today or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. You must be 21 years or older. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And while I got you here, let's talk about the Field of 68 Media Network, where college basketball matters most all year round. This is a digital media and podcast network that we've been building over the course of the last year. We have shows hosted by some of your favorite players covering the program that they love the most. AJ Guyton hosts the House of Hoosier. Eric Devendorf covers Syracuse on the scorer's table. Dan Dickow hosts the Gonzaga Bulldog broadcast. We have Florida's Patrick Young and Duke's Andre Dawkins and North Carolina's Shammond Williams and Michigan's Stu Douglas and Illinois' Deion Thomas. The list goes on and on and on. We have more than 30 shows right now. So hit the links below and check them all out. And while you're at it, make sure that you go check out the Field of 12 Media Network, your home for college football. So you guys mentioned North Carolina a little bit. This is obviously another team and another program that's undergoing a change in leadership. Hubert Davis is his first season at North Carolina. T.O., what are you expecting to see out of this North Carolina team this year? Are they going to be running the same stuff that they ran under Roy? Are we going to be seeing the same kind of secondary break? What are you expecting out of this group?
Well, here's my thing with this. Hubert's never coached under anybody else or played for any other system than the one that Dean Smith ran and the one that Roy Williams ran. So here's my thing. I think it's going to be a lot of the same, but I think because you add Brady Manick, because you add Dawson Garcia, you're just going to be able to extend that second post out further. Right. The only thing that worries me, and it doesn't worry me a ton because they still have a lot of size, you are taking away a strength one of the things that has helped North Carolina be great for so long is the fact that they attack the offensive glass. When you pull that four-man a little bit further out, you're almost taking away a strength to cover up for a weakness, and floor spacing has been an issue. I think this year, because Caleb Love was relentless in attacking the paint, I mean, he shot 90 more shots than anybody else on his team. I give the guy credit. I love that kind of guy. That's my kind of guy. But other than that, like, I think you're going to see dramatic improvement because they both had a summer. And Caleb Love's going to be able to operate at a much higher level. And there's going to be some wide open spaces because Kerwin Walton shot it great. I think RJ Davis is going to shoot it better. Brady Manick is a career 35 to 37 and a half guy from beyond the arc. And Dawson Garcia can flat out play. And then you have that post presence with Armando Bacot. I think they're going to do a lot of the same stuff. I think defensively, they're going to get up in the passing lanes and just continue to make things difficult because they have guys behind that should be able to protect the paint in Armando Bacot.
To add to that, I think you got to add a question mark would be, I wonder how Anthony Harris is with the full season under his belt. You're talking about a kid that led the EYBL, was actually a teammate of Jeremy Roach and Keel in high school. I mean, they had an unbelievable team. And you're talking about a young man that can flat out just, he could just shoot the basketball. He was a high percentage, over 40% EYBL, great on-ball defender. So, another year removed from that ACL injury, I think he can be a big piece of that. And don't forget the freshman DeMarco Dunn. I think that kid coming in, he has great size, can really have shot making. So they're going to be able to space the floor and have so much versatility on that lineup with that group that, again, they can. And Leaky Black is there and going to be able to attack the glass from that wing spot. He can play the 1 through 4 for them. So they're going to have as much versatility as, like we said, Florida State and Duke will have too. So this is the team, I think, again, they'll be right there to win it.
Yeah, I do think the ability to get those floor spacers is going to be the key for this North Carolina team.
Yes.
Because if you look at the best North Carolina teams over the years, they've been the teams that have had these great kind of shoot first dynamic playmakers at the point, right? Whether it's Raymond Felton or Ty Lawson or Marcus Page or Joel Berry or Kobe Wright, whoever it ends up being, like those are the guys that work the best in that kind of secondary break, Roy Williams system. And I think that Caleb Love could end up being that guy this year. You got a full off season, right? You've been able to work out with your team. You don't have to deal with all of the stuff that you dealt with last season with COVID in terms of not being able to work out with each other, not being in the gym with each other. I think that if you look at the way he ended the season, he made 13 of his last 34 threes. That's not great. It's not Randolph Childress-esque, but it's getting better, and it's getting better. And I think we're going to see improvement this year. And I do think he gets better. If there's more space to be able to get in the lane, I mean, that's going to be what he does best. So I do think the floor spacing is going to be the key for this team. But Tio, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I'm a little bit concerned about whether or not the best lineup for North Carolina will be the best 5 players on the floor at the same time for North Carolina, if that makes sense.
No, you're probably right. I mean, I would put Brady Manick in that situation too, just because he's been so solid for so long. But they have pieces. That's the big thing. I'm a big puzzle piece guy. If the pieces fit, usually the teams do a lot better. And, I think Kerwin Walton, even though he's probably not the most skilled guy, he shot mid-40s from 3. Like, he was unbelievable. And he's going to be able to open the floor. I think the pieces fit much better. There was just a hodgepodge of guys last year. Garrison Brooks probably got an unfair preseason player of the year because he thrives whenever he's not the focal point. He thrives whenever Cole Anthony was firing it up 30 times a game and he was able to go and get it. So I feel like the pieces of this team fit. And even if your best players aren't all on the floor at the same time, man, you want to talk about being able to just come in waves off the bench. It almost reminds me of when I was playing Carolina, and then off the bench comes Danny Green and off the bench comes Tyler Zeller. Like, they have talent again to where they're going to be able to just come at you and they're going to be able to maintain pressure because they have enough guys.
I think they were a lot easier to guard last year than they will be this year. Again, having Walton and having Love, those guys were improved. We talked about Anthony Harris, DeMarco Dunn. Puff Johnson's another guy that can space the floor and make shots. Last year, as good as they were with Kessler and with Sharp and those guys, I mean, they were just so big. We just decided, hey, you know what? Just sit in the paint. Don't leave the paint on those guys. They were no threat to score outside the paint. I don't know if you can play them that way this year. I think teams started scouting that, saying, hey, we're going to sit there and we're going to leave the bigs leave the paint. You stay in the paint. So now they put more pressure on the guards. I think now they're going to be able to, the ability for Manic to make shots from the perimeter. Now you got to guard him. It's going to make Armando that much better and just space the floor. We know they're going to run. We know they're going to crash the glass. But I think they have options now. So when there's an off night, they have 4 or 5 guys now that they can rely on that's going to make perimeter shots that they just didn't have in the years past. They've had dynamic guard play, but even Cole was more of a scorer than he was someone you feared from the outside. When Cole made threes, you just hung your hat and said, all right, he's going for 30 tonight. And so this team, I think, has more balance, more perimeter shooting, just more options. Like you said, more pieces to the puzzle. So this night, this doesn't work. This guy comes in, and that's why I think they're a team that's going to be special in this league as well.
I think the fact that Cole Anthony, and we're going back 2 years here, but the fact that he wouldn't make that pitch ahead pass stalled the Carolina break to an unbelievable extent. And now that Caleb Love and RJ Day, if they're able to make that pitch ahead pass and then run a lot of second side offense, I think they're going to be so much better and more efficient, especially now that they have shooters. They're going to be able to attack off the catch more as well.
Yeah, and just to make sure it was about Jeff Lebo. I thought Jeff coming in, him adding Jeff was a surprise to his staff. Lets you know they're not changing much. I mean, I think Jeff, they could. I wonder, that's the only thing that made me think about your first question when you said, are they going to run the Carolina break? He went and got Jeff Lebo, who has gone and coached on his own program and has run some different things. So I'm wondering that it'd be interesting to see. I would love to get up to a practice soon and watch those guys and see. I think they'll run some similarities, but between Coach Smith and Coach Williams, that's a lot of national championships to be changing your, the offense and the way things goes. But as long as Armando and that front line's there, I don't think they'll change too much. It still starts inside and works its way out at Carolina. I don't think that'll change.
And you don't have to change it. You don't have to change it.
Right.
All you have to do is extend it, because it's already ready-made for what you try to do anyway. You're still going to be able to make that high-low pass. You're still going to be able to get the back screen on the opposite side. You don't have to change it. All you're doing is adding shooters and different personnel. Right. My question to you, I mean, you obviously coached against them a long time. How do you think their offensive rebounding is going to be impacted by trying to push those guys further out? Do you think that's going to be an issue going into the season?
No, because Leaky Black and those guys from the perimeter, he's averaging almost 3 offensive rebounds a game. So he's 6'8", running from the 1, 2, or the 3 for them, and sometimes the floor. So when he's playing on the on the wing, he's crashing. So the guards are not accustomed to that's his strength. He understands, hey, perimeter shooting is not my strength. He'll take open shots, but he puts so much pressure on the glass that's what they do. I mean, for so many years, they would lead the country in offensive rebounding for missed shots. So they would offensive rebound almost half their misses. Those things I don't think would change. So they'll have better shooting this year to help them. But again, I don't think they need it as much. They're just so big, so athletic. For most teams, they're just going to pound the glass on you. But that's one of the most underrated things that they do. Is the spacing is great. They're going to need it. It'll open up the floor for Armando and those guys to play inside, but it also opens up lanes to crash the glass and rebound, which they're as good as any team in the country at doing that.
Yeah, I think the most important point that you guys made was the predictability factor for North Carolina. Right. Last year, you basically knew it was either going to be Caleb going to the basket or you're going to try to throw the ball inside to Walker, one of the big fellas. And there's going to be more options for them offensively. Speaking of predictability, the most predictable thing in college basketball right now is that Louisville is going to have some kind of off-season controversy. It's there's never, you like that segue, T.O.? That was pretty good, right? There's never a dull moment in the off-season in Louisville. It's gotten to the point I kind of feel bad for Chris Mack, man, because it piles up and they just cannot seem to get out from underneath the cloud of everything. And this all dates all the way back to 2015 with the Katina Powell stuff. So let me ask you this, Randolph, we can start with you here. How difficult is it as a coach when you have kind of something over your program like that? That's got to be a distraction. How hard is it to run your team when you got that going on? And also, how hard is it to recruit when you don't necessarily know if these players are going to be able to play in the tournament? Because, I mean, we've been hearing that for like 3 years now. They might end up getting a postseason ban, but we're still dealing with those question marks.
I think the biggest thing that's hurting them is what you just said, is recruiting, right? And the longer this lingers, the longer it hurts them in recruiting, and it brings them back to the pack. I think we go back 2 years, we thought this program was taking off and about to remain amongst the elite programs. Recruiting was going great. They were top 3 recruiting class in the country. They had it going. And then as these sanctions, not sanctions, but these allegations and everything that's coming in, this dark cloud's coming in, and it's hurt them in 22 recruiting. So now you're going to prolong another sanction, whether it's a postseason ban or whatever it is. Even though, again, the same old adage comes in, everyone says the same thing. Hey, this certain staff members and players didn't do anything to deserve this, but it's coming, but recruiting is the biggest issue with these guys. I mean, in this league, they need recruits, and they're struggling with that right now.
Yeah, I do think that it's hard to really judge the Chris Mack tenure at this point, right? Because we never really seen it kind of, when he's been able to get his legs under him and run with this thing, and run with this program, because it always feels like they're getting shots to the knees. I do think, however, that this team is probably a little bit better than maybe some of the offseason buzz they're getting credit for. We don't necessarily know who's going to be the star in the backcourt, but I think they have 3 or 4 really good options. Jared West, Noah Locke, L. Ellis. I think that Samuel Williamson is a guy that can take a step forward. And I talked with Chris last week for a Louisville preview, and he was talking very highly about Jalen Withers. So, Tio, how do you feel about this group and this team moving forward this season?
Well, I think because of the lack of the ability to recruit, because of the uncertainty that you guys alluded to, they go to the transfer portal. And what they do, they bring in 4 guys that shoot over 40% from 3. Like Matt Cross was a very good player before he left Miami. He just wasn't happy, I guess. I don't know what that was all about. Just wasn't happy. Leaves, goes to Louisville. He can shoot the ball. He's going to space the floor. The Jared West from Marshall, he's going to remind some people of Jose Alvarado light. I'm not going to say he's that kind of dominant person, but his statistics say that he would be. And then they add a late piece in Mason Faulkner, who's a playmaking guard who was supposed to go to Colorado, which would have been a perfect fit for him, wanted to stay closer to home. They've got pieces this year to compete at the top. My question is, are they going to be able to compete, and is he going to be able to regain his footing after those first 6 games? Because if he is, this team could be good, because let's be honest, Chris Mack can coach. Like, that guy can coach. He's going to draw it up. They're going to scheme really well. And now he's got shooters around the perimeter that's going to space the floor. My only thing is, I wish all these shooters were here last year whenever Carlick Jones was trying to do whatever he wanted, because it would have made his job so much easier. I think Mark Williams is a big piece. If he's able to stay healthy, Louisville was towards the bottom of the conference in rim protection and blocks last year. I think they need him to remain healthy for them to compete at the top and to, make it maybe a second weekend run in the tournament. I think that's entirely possible. I just feel like if they can get through those first 6 games and shrug off the nonsense, I like some of the pieces that Chris Mack made this summer.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff will quiet down too once the season gets going. We have no basketball to talk about. So what do we have to talk about? We get to make jokes about Louisville, right? That's kind of what the offseason is. We talk about Duke, we talk about Kentucky, we talk about North Carolina, we talk about all the recruits, and we make jokes about all the stuff that's going wrong at Louisville. It'll quiet down a little bit once you kind of get into the season and get into the flow, right?
They'll rally amongst each other, I think, right? They'll rally around that. I think the guys in the locker room and the staff will rally around it. I think they'll be fine with it. Most of the time in your first 6 games, you're not playing. I don't think anyone is going to scare them on their schedule in the first 6 games or so. Depends on, maybe a matchup in an MTE or so. But I think they'll be fine. I think they'll get through that stretch and they'll rally around each other. They'll have to get ready for that early conference ACC play in December, with the 20 games now. But I think they'll be fine. They will be underrated team, but I think can beat anybody in that league.
All right, so let's move on to the team that I think I'm the most excited to see this season, and that's my guy Tio. Give it to me. Give me a New Bloods.
New Bloods. What's up, CY? Get him right, CY. He's been yelling New Bloods for the past 10 years. Are you kidding me? CY is ready. He's let everybody know. New Bloods, baby. New Bloods.
I feel like we've gotten to the point with this Florida State team where it doesn't actually matter who the guys are on the roster. You don't even need to look at the names. Know you're going to have a roster full of guys that are somewhere between 6'5" and 7'2" that can all guard any position, that all will switch everything, that can all make threes, that can all run the point. You don't even need to know the names. You just know exactly what you're going to get out of this group. Randolph, talk to me about them. How tough are they to prepare for? How tough is that defense to go up against? And how frustrating is it to just see all of that arms and all of those wingspans?
They're the most difficult team in the league to play because you're not going to run your stuff. They're not going to let you run it. They're literally going to switch everything. They're going to put, like you said, they're going to put 5 guys out there from 6'5" to 7'3". You don't know what they're going to put out there. You just know it's going to be some length, and you know it's going to be athletes on the floor. They are the most difficult team to play against because they're going to spread you out. They're just going to switch everything. They're just going to point, switch, just guard the ball, force you into a shot, have a block party at the rim, and then get out and run the break. I think the one thing that they have this year that they haven't had, or they've had some different guys, I think Caleb Mills is a straight bucket. And I think he's a scorer at something that they haven't had in a long time. He's a 3-level guy. He's shorter than what they're accustomed to having. He's not as big, but he can flat out fill up the basket. So I think he's a guy that's depending on where they finish in the league. I think he'll be their leading scorer and a potential player of the year candidate because I just think he scores it naturally. He's a natural scorer and I don't know if they have many guys that have been like him.
We call him small. He's 6'4". Like that's what we're dealing with.
That's the thing is Florida State, though. He gets small. You know what I mean? He's small for Florida State guard.
He's the shortest guy on their roster. How about that? The shortest guy on their roster
Evans.
is 6'4".
It's unbelievable.
Him and Raekwon Evans are the two smallest guys. Like, it's an incredible lineup. Whenever I was working for Coach Brownell, who loves to draw things up, it makes it almost impossible because they get out there and what it comes down to is, do you have the individuals that can make a play on their own to beat Florida State? Because even when you break down their defense, they don't overhelp because those athletes, when they're trailing behind, they can come and block shots that way. I mean, it's endless length, not to mention they have 3 guys over 7'1" that are down there waiting for you if you do get too far. I do wonder, Balsa Koprivica was relied on a lot. Is Tenori Ngam going to be able to be that guy? That's not really what he does. I mean, he was when he was in Canada, but he was in Canada. I don't know what the Canadian basketball conference is like, but he showed some things. He's got soft hands, a good looking shot because he shot 80-something% from the free throw line. Can he be that guy? It's going to be interesting, but a name to keep an eye out. And you know this name, Coach. John Butler Jr. 7'1", 180 pounds, skinny as a rail.
Yeah.
Going to be playing at 2. Wait and watch it happen because he's not a post player. They're going to set him up. He's going to give good enough length on the perimeter, and he's going to be able to guard, and he can really play. Matthew Cleveland's gotten a lot of pub for being kind of that fringe McDonald's guy for them, and he is a beast. Don't get me wrong.
Listen, I watched him play once, and I didn't even need to go back and watch him play again. I watched him play in a tournament twice, and I was like, he's the best player here. I don't even need to go see him again. I think he's amazing. I think he's going to be a big-time player for them as well. He's a talented player. They're going to do Florida State things. I mean, they're going to be right there when it at the end of the season. They're going to be right there competing for like we said, I think it's those 3 teams, I think, are the 3 teams to beat that we've talked about today. I think it's UNC, it's Duke, and it's Florida State.
Yeah. Were you referring to Cleveland or Butler?
I think Cleveland is the guy. I watched him play. Butler is unique. I still, because the physical strength of him concerns me. Mm-hmm. He's so tall, but he's 180 pounds. Guys like that, when they're playing on the perimeter at the pace that they're going to play, sometimes struggle because he's so thin. Like, he's a thin kid. He's a thin young man. And so as he gets stronger, as the season wears on with him, I expect big things out of him. And then they're going to find more of a natural position for him. Is he going to be guard maybe the stretch 4s on the other teams? Like, how are they going to match him up defensively, where I think Cleveland just slides right in. Matthew slides into just a natural guard spot and just fits in and goes along like system. But with Butler, I think it depends on the matchups. And I think the physical strength of him is something that I'm concerned about. 7 feet, 180, he's a thin kid. He needs to add some weight and some strength on him. But when he does, look out, because he's really skilled.
I do think you hit the nail on the head with Caleb Mills, though. I think that is kind of where the difference lies with this team. We know what they're going to be defensively, right? Like, last year was probably their worst defensive team in a long time. Well, we're still talking about a group that had Scotty Barnes, that had Raekwon Gray, and that was one of the probably 35 or 40 best defensive teams in college basketball. So we know where they're going to be on that end. But what happens, like, who do you give the ball to, right? That's something that they've kind of missed in recent years. Like, you're at the end of a shot clock, right? And you're at the end of a game and you need a bucket. Who are you giving the ball to? Well, like, Scotty Barnes, like, that was kind of the knock on him, right? Like, he wasn't a great scorer. He was great at everything else, but he wasn't a great scorer necessarily.
They tried with MJ Walker. And he just, from an efficiency standpoint, he just wasn't where they needed him to be to really, make that final weekend.
You just backed up on those guys and waited for them at the paint. And, it's kind of like their best offense at times last year was just throw it up on the glass and go get it. They were going to out athlete you to the rim. But Caleb is a 3-level scorer. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of his, and I've seen him for a long time. I think he's the difference maker for that group on the other end. Like you said, late clock, just a guy, a bucket getter. It's just he may be the most natural scorer in the league this year. I think other teams have different players. You may say this guy's a better shooter. This guy may finish better at the rim. But a 3-level scorer just wake up out of the bed and makes it look easy. I think he's the best in the league.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I have him ranked pretty high when we get to our all conference teams later on in the show. The last storyline that I want to touch on here, T.O., I know you love Virginia Tech. I know you got them second in the league. So I'm gonna let you tout it right now. Why are they going to be the best program in Virginia in the 2021-22 college basketball season?
Kive Aluma should have been a player of the year candidate last year, and they end up not getting to play pretty much the month of February. He's so versatile, and I think Mike Young's just able to get it done and get the absolute most out of his players. Hunter Couture was supposed to go to Wofford. He takes him to Virginia Tech. Wabisa Bidi, who was a good player, wasn't a very good shooter. Now you take him out and you put Storm Murphy in, and Storm's a dude. Like 17 points, 4 or 5 assists. I don't know the exact assist numbers, but I know over 17 points at high percentages. And if you go back and look at his film, a lot of it's in transition, pulling up threes, step backs. He's attacking. He's making plays for his teammates. And he kind of gives an extra dynamic to a team full of guys that are really skilled and can all shoot the ball. And I feel like I say it every time, old wins. Virginia Tech's old, and their old guys are really, really good. And I think it's going to be a special season in Blacksburg. Not to mention, one of the best home court environments in the entire conference. And I don't think there's going to be any letdown because, you know, Young puts those guys in the right spot consistently. Get your popcorn ready.
Yeah, he does. I love watching the stuff that he runs. He knows how to get his shooters in a spot where you can take advantage of it. And it feels like the kind of guy that T.O. you would have really liked playing in that offense. Could you imagine him? Who was the kid they had at Wofford the last year when they made the tournament?
Fletcher.
Fletcher McGee. Like it feels like that would T.O. you would have liked playing that role quite a bit. What do you think of Virginia Tech, Randolph, and where do you have them as opposed to Virginia this season?
I think they're right there. I mean, they're returning everyone. I've been around the league long enough to know I'm never going to count Virginia out. I just can't do it. Every year I'll come in and I'm like, I don't see it. They don't have enough. And then they're right there. I mean, they've been the best program in this league the last 5 years. And I don't see, I think they've lost some shooting, and we'll get to them in a second. But Virginia Tech, I agree everything Teal just said. The only thing that concerns me is with Storm is just defending. I think teams are going to be able to attack him and put him in ball screens. I think what he adds to them offensively it's going to be great. Losing Radford is big, though. He was an efficient bucket as well. So losing him is really tough for those guys. But they're loaded. They're bringing everyone back. I think they're going to be a tough out. They'll be right there. They'll be amongst the top 3 or 4 teams in this league.
So my biggest question with Virginia this season, and part of the reason why I agree with you guys that I think Virginia Tech will finish above Virginia this season, is that it feels like it always takes a little while for people to adjust to what Tony Bennett expects out of that defensive system. And look, I thought Armand Franklin was underrated at Indiana last year, and I do think that the kid that they got coming in from East Carolina is a good player, but yeah, it's a little bit of a weird fit, and then it just. I mean, that pack line, man, you have to be so well drilled to really kind of thrive in that as a player. Like the whole reason it succeeds is because everybody is always in the right spot at the right time. It's not because they have these great defensive players. Like they were the best defensive team in the country, and they had Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome playing in their backcourt. Like those guys aren't going to be great one-on-one players, but they were always in the right spot. And when you have everybody doing that, it makes sense. Now you have all of these new faces, a lot of these new pieces, a lot of guys that we haven't necessarily heard of. I mean, it's going to be a little bit of a change there. Tio, what do you think?
I think the weird thing is Jaden Gardner doesn't really fit what they typically do. He's a 6'7" back to the basket guy who thrives on the interior. He's going to provide no floor spacing. And if I'm an opposing coach, I'm just going to curl protect everything and not worry about him sealing so much. I mean, you don't have to worry. You can just chase over the top of everything and not necessarily have to worry about him as an offensive threat out on the perimeter. Now, when he gets the ball on the block, then I'd be a little worried, but it's just kind of a weird fit. The way he scores and the way Tony Bennett's system is, it's not typical to what he's had in the past. So I'm not saying it can't work, because Bennett will find a way for it to work. But I think there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period. I'm in agreement with you as far as Armand Franklin. I don't think there's a player that's better suited to play Virginia style than him. 6'4", 6'5", shot it above 40% from three. I think it was right at 42, if my memory serves me correctly. And he moves the ball and he can handle it at the point guard during times, like at spots. He's not going to do that all the time, but he can do that for you when you need to. I think the interesting piece offensively for this team is when you're going to let Reese Beekman go. Mm-hmm. I think like Kihei Clark is amazingly efficient. I think he's done a fantastic job. He's been there since I was in high school, it seems like. But Reese Beekman provides a little bit of explosiveness, especially with his quickness getting to the basket. I wonder if he's going to have a bigger role this year, especially on the offensive end. But another thing they don't really have, who's going to be a rim protector? And you say they're always in the right spot at the right time. But if you look back 5-6 years, Amadi Diakite, Jack Salt, Jay Huff, who was there last year, they've always had that guy. Is Francisco Cafaro finally going to have a breakthrough year and be that guy? He hasn't so far, and he hasn't earned their trust to where he can play significant minutes. Who's going to be that guy that can protect the rim on the defensive end?
I don't think they have a rim protector. I think Caden Cedric will be the big inside. I think he'll give them that floor balance. I think he's skilled enough. He can face up. I think they need him to take a step. I mean, I don't think they can replace Jay, but they've lost so much offensively. I think they're gonna struggle to score from perimeter. I think Jaden Gardner he's not a great shooter, but he takes the right shots at times. I think his ability to put the ball on the floor is going to be something that's difficult if you try to back off of him to make them guard you. They're going to put so much pressure. I mean, believe it or not, they posted K.E. Clark last year, and he was a bucket on the block. Like, we were sitting there, we would laugh at guys. I'm sitting there like, if this guy posted, you got to come out of the game. And then they would run a play, and he'd get the ball in the post. I can't tell you guys in watching the film how amazing it is that this. How tall is he? Is he 5 what? I mean, I'm telling you,
list him at 5'9". There's no chance that dude is
exactly. He's not even close to that. And and I'm talking, you can put your 6'4" guard on him, and they will put him in the post. And he's incredibly effective doing it and draws so many fouls. So I think that's going to be the issue with Beekman, taking the ball out of his hand. But he has an extra gear. Reese is so fast with the ball in his hands. He's hit a couple of game-winning shots for him last year. I mean, if he can take a step, they're going to need him to take a step and give him a little rope. But we know, I mean, to play in Virginia, I used to joke and say, hey, the first team to score 60 is going to win the game. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to defend. They're going to control the pace. They're not going to turn the ball over, and they're just not going to beat themselves. And so if they can find enough scoring, a perimeter scoring, that'll be there, keeping them in the top half of the league. If not, they'll take a step back. But I just can't bet against those guys. No matter who you say you plug in that lineup, they're going to defend. They're going to control the pace. It's just a matter to see which guy's going to step up.
Yeah, Caden Shedrick can play. Like he was a good player. Like he had to adjust. Like that kid is skilled. He's long. He's pretty athletic. He runs really well. Holly Springs, right? Holly Springs, stand up. Yeah. Is that what we're at right now? Yeah. I mean, he's a good player.
He is. He's going to be a guy that we can look up in the second, in the middle of the year and be like, man, I can see this coming. He has that type of skill set. And with the year, and like you said, having a full offseason, he's the type of guy these sophomores are going to benefit now because this is their real first offseason. And there's a lot, with Tony, you don't defend, you don't play. Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of those guys, I think they've getting the full offseason and, the full fall, hands-on with all their coaches. I just hard to count those guys out because of the style of play.
All right, so let's get into our power rankings here. And we can kind of dive into some of the teams near the bottom half of the league in this part of the conversation. But I'm just kind of curious, so the way that I have it in my mind is that I think Duke is the favorite, right? I think Duke is the best team in the conference. I think with Paolo there, he's the best player in the league. And you combine all of that with what they can do defensively and the talent on that roster. In my mind, Duke is the favorite. And then you have kind of that hodgepodge, right? You got North Carolina in the mix there. You got Florida State in the mix there. You got Virginia Tech in the mix there. You got Louisville in the mix there. You got Virginia in the mix there. Where do you guys stand on kind of your I guess the top six maybe? And do you think it is a top six in this conference? T.O., why don't you start?
Well, I got Duke winning their first regular season since 2009. I think there's too much there, and they're finally got some older guys. There's pieces. They're going to overwhelm you defensively. I like them at 1. Virginia Tech, we just talked about them. So much shooting, so much skill on the perimeter. Kive Aluma's a dude. And I got North Carolina 3rd. I think there's going to be some adjustment times for Hubert. I mean, there's a big difference between being in that assistant seat and being the guy. and he's going to have some adjustment, especially towards the beginning of the ACC season. I think that's going to be interesting. We got Florida State 4th. Florida State's Florida State. We've already knocked that out. They are what they are. 5, Virginia. I can't count out Tony Bennett, and I felt guilty for putting them 5th because they won the regular season last year and probably didn't have top 5 talent on that roster. But Tony Bennett still figured out a way for it to go.
Probably didn't.
Well, I'm a nice guy, Douster. I try to be the nice guy of all of our group here. Like, you know what I'm saying? I try to be the nice guy. 6, I have Louisville. I think they're going to shake it off and they're going to have a good season. I think there's too much shooting on that roster as it is presently. Who knows what will happen by December with the roster? But I think there's too much talent on Louisville to really struggle. And then we're going to get into this, but I think Notre Dame, they have so much offensive ability.
Yes.
They are that guy. I have them 7th, but they can score from every perimeter spot. Nate Lajewski, I thought he was going to have a breakout year last season. He was excellent, shot great percentages, and they probably have one of the better point guards in the country at Prentice Hub. But those dudes don't guard anybody. I'm talking nobody. Anytime you watch a kid's stats, he's just lighting Notre Dame up. And Mike Bray, you got to get your guys to guard. Like, they're going to have Paul Atkinson, who's a bucket on the interior. We talk about buckets. That dude's a bucket. Didn't get to play last year. He's exceptional. He was the Ivy League Player of the Year. He gives them an inside scoring presence that they haven't had since Mooney. They do lose their best defender in Juwan Durham on a team that couldn't defend.
They finished outside the top 200 on Ken Palm in defensive efficiency. Didn't they hire who's the assistant they brought in from Dayton? Blanking on the name, but they Anthony Solomon, right?
They brought him back. They brought him back. He was there, and they brought him back.
Yeah. So I've seen people make that connection. Like, the best years that Mike Bray had at Notre Dame was with Anthony Solomon on the staff, and now they got him back, and maybe that's going to be the fix defensively. We'll see. I think to a certain point, if you don't have good defenders on your team, you don't have good defenders on your basketball team. T.O. was not out there. T.O. wasn't out there to guard anybody, right? So
hey, I would have fit that system perfect. I wasn't guarding anybody. I wasn't guarding anybody. You had to convince me. OP was just like, you know what? He hits enough shots. We got to leave him in there, but because I have no choice. But I wasn't guarding anybody. But Prentice Hub, here's the thing too. Going back to Notre Dame's defense, Prentice Hub led the league in minutes. It was 36 or 37 minutes a game.
Right.
It is so hard to maintain a defensive intensity for that long when you're relied on so much on the other end. And when you're the head of the snake on offense, you're also guarding the guy initiating offense on the other end. You're not making anything difficult. I think that's something to keep an eye on, but I'm not sure they really have a point guard behind him that can give them a ton of minutes.
Right. But they used Trey Wertzel last year as a backup guard. He kind of came with a secondary ball handler. I don't think that'll change. I don't think there's anyone there that's gonna change that. And
Trey Wertz is a good player, and he got eligible in the middle of the season, but he's not Prentice Hub.
No.
And so there's definitely a step off. And look, Notre Dame's hard to guard because it's like they have Prentice Hub and a bunch of clones. It's all the same guy. They can all dribble, pass, and shoot, and they're all about 6'6". Every one of them, Trey Wertz included. Those guys, they're all skilled and multifaceted, and they have good size. They just don't guard anybody.
So, Randolph, where do you stand on the top 6 right now? I think we're all the same. I think Duke I have, is number 1. I think Carolina, I got Carolina, and I'm kind of jostling back and forth between Carolina and Florida State. I like Florida State with Caleb Mills. I just think he's going to be underrated, a major, major addition. I think he's the best scorer in the league. UNC, I don't worry about as much because that system hadn't changed in 50 years. It's been the same system. So the only difference is Hubert's going to have to call a timeout a few more times when Roy just said, the hell with it, y'all just play through it. That's the only adjustments need to be made there. I don't think it's going to be that big of adjustment, and I do think he'll lean on Jeff. And it's the system, guys. They're going to run that. That hasn't changed much. Seriousness. But I do think down the roster, they just have a little bit more flexibility than they've had in the past, and they're going to have a lot of bodies, and it's not going to change. Florida State, we've talked about. I think they're there, and then I have Virginia Tech, and we're talking a game. Any last-second shot changed that, but those 4, I think, will be right there with to finish in the end. 5th, I have Virginia. I laughed at that. We talked about Virginia and Louisville. I think that those are the top 6 teams in the league. And going past that, I think the next group that I would have would be, I think Syracuse. only because, again, we talked about the Syracuse, we just talked about Notre Dame. My concern is like yours. Notre Dame just can't guard, but no one puts 5 guys on the floor that can make a shot like Notre Dame, but they just can't guard. So if they're making shots, you're in trouble. If they're not, you're going to have your way. But I think Syracuse has just that zone. That zone is just, if you're not making shots that day, you're going to be in trouble. And Buddy and those guys, Buddy's a bucket. I mean, he can flat out shoot at a high clip. Getting Benny Williams coming in there is going to help them replace losing Guerrier on the front line. He's bringing some length, some athleticism. So I think they're going to be poised because they're going to be able to score. The zone, everyone knows it. Everyone's copying it. No one's ever really able to emulate it as well as they do it. So I think that, they're going to keep you at a low, they're going to keep you in a low percentage from 3 and just continue to play that zone and do what it does. But they're going to be able to score on the other end more than they have in the past. So I have them being that last few teams from the SEC, from the ACC that'll kind of make the tournament. I think they'll be that 7th and 18th. They'll Syracuse and Notre Dame.
Yeah, I love Syracuse this year. I think if there's going to be anybody from that group of other teams that kind of sneaks into the top 6, is going to be Syracuse. They're going to beat some people they're not supposed to beat this year because of the way that they shoot. On the nights those shots are going down, when Buddy's hitting shots, when Joe Girard is making shots, when Jimmy Boeheim is making shots. He averaged 17 a game last year at Cornell. You mentioned Benny Williams. They got Symir Torrance coming in, the transfer from Marquette, who I think is going to be good, and who. Yeah, the guys, I mean, the people at Syracuse think that Symir had a really good offseason. Cole Swider, one of the best shooters in when I remember watching him in the EYB. I can't remember who he played for, but he was one of the best shooters there.
BABC.
BABC,
Yep, 6'8". So they have a lot of guys that can shoot, a lot of guys that can score. One thing I do want to note about Joe Girard is he was a football player in high school too, right? And from what I was told, he kind of like during COVID, he went back and he was hanging out with all his football buddies and doing like football workouts, which is part of the reason why he showed up back at campus a little bit too heavy last season. And I guess he was probably like 15 or 20 pounds overweight. And from the sound of it, he's lost some of that weight. We're going to see the Joe Girard that broke all those Jimmer Fredette scoring records when he was in high school in New York. And when you put that kid out there with the 2 Boeheims, Benny Williams, and Cole Swider, Symir Torrance, you're going to have a team that can score a lot of points. The last thing I'll note about them, the best Syracuse teams are when you have that big 7-footer around the basket that can erase everything in the paint and make it so that you can make that zone stretch out on the perimeter, and you just kind of dare teams either shoot a contested 3 over the top of us or go try to finish over a big fella in the paint. I think Jesse Edwards down the stretch of the season, last 10 games, was really, really good for them. And I'm expecting him to kind of have a big year this year. I don't know if it's going to end up being the guy that plays like 35 minutes. You know how Jim Boeheim doesn't want to play his bench at all. I don't know if he's going to be a 35-minute a game guy or if he's going to play 20 minutes and they're going to play Baruma Sidibe for 20 minutes at a time. But I think there's more options at the 5 this year than he's had in the past. And I think that's going to really help them defensively.
Well, Sidibe, before going out, he only played 2 games last year. Before going out, I mean, he was one of the league leaders in shot blocks, and he's got like a 7'6" wingspan. The dude's huge. And I think it was 7 points, 9 boards, something like that before last season. He's definitely going to add a different element. And they struggled with that last year because Marek Dolezaj, as good as he was offensively, it's almost like Boeheim was trying to get 5 guys who could really go offensively. And they had that. And they just it took a second for them to kind of figure things out. And when Buddy went nuts. But an interesting stat, over the last 7 years, Syracuse has been within 2 games of 500, either at 8-10 or 10-8. The last 7 years. And I think a lot of that, and then they go on and have, everybody calls it a shocking run. You know how hard it is to prepare for that zone over the course of a day in the NCAA tournament? Forget about it. All that length. And then you're going, say they play a 5-12 game and they're the 12 and they're playing somebody from another conference. They haven't seen that type of length. Syracuse has been the tallest team in the country for the past 3 years or something. Them in Florida State, it's a toss up. Like, I think that's a big portion. When teams have time to prepare for the zone, you can find some things. Tony Bennett found some things, get it to the high post and back dribble out because Sidibe would have to follow him. He found some weaknesses in that zone. So when you have time to prepare, you can figure those things out. But one thing they have this year, and you alluded to it, Rob, 4 guys that could shoot 40% from 3.
Yep.
And that's the biggest difference. Last year, Guerrier was kind of a mid-post ISO guy. Gerard, had an iffy year at best. I thought he was better the year before, but Buddy Boeheim, he was special in the tournament. Now, is he going to be able to maintain that? And he got so much better from the time that he got to campus. Whenever he showed up, he was
like that dude. They rave about how much time he spends in the gym. Like
what else he
from a
do?
dude that couldn't create any space. And like now he's at, when you average 18 a game in the ACC, like it doesn't matter. Your coach's son, whatever. Like you're 18 points a game in the ACC. You are a player.
Yeah, he's a dude, and he's got a high release point. He's become so much better playing off the catch to attack. And basically, he catches the ball. He could be an isolation scorer if he catches it and hasn't used his dribble already. Like he's kind of an old school isolation scorer, and he's got such good length for college. He's going to have another fantastic year. But they have floor spacing this year. Do they really have somebody that's going to attack the paint?
Nope.
I thought losing Kaderi Richmond to Seton Hall, I thought that was a bigger deal than I think Syracuse fans realized, because he was kind of that super athlete that could get into the paint.
All right, so Samir is going to help them out a lot like that. And then we don't know what Benny's going to bring to him. But I think Samir can bring that guard athletically on a perimeter, getting in the passing lanes. I mean, for them to run a 2-3 zone, they get a lot of steals out of that. They do a lot of running. I mean, people turn the ball over at a high rate against that zone. But being able to rotate bodies at that 5, it doesn't matter if it's a Gibe, if it's John Bol, Jack. They're going to be Edwards. They're going to rotate those 3 guys and say, look, we're going into the game. No layups. You got 15 fouls, and then they're just going to rotate, the other 4 positions, other guys, and just play. They're going to have length. You put Benny there, Cole on one wing. They're going to be 6'8", 6'9", offensively talented, and just can flat out shoot it. So the great thing about it is the way they get in the paint with those guys, they'll just curl Buddy in the paint right off a curl, because you have to lock and trail on him, and he just gets to his spots and elevate over you. But they're going to space you out so much that you don't need to be able to wiggle with the ball. You're just going to be able to straight go shot, fake, and drive it. You're not going to have to worry about creating so much with them off the dribble, because they're going to have 4 guys. Like I said, having 4 guys on the floor that easily going to be 40% shooters, it's going to be a tough task for anybody. And then scoring against that zone. I think they're going to make adjustments like that. Again, I've seen them, if you start doing it, like you said, the key is getting it in the high post. But if you put a guy in there that he can't really shoot, they'll give that to you as well. They'll say, hey, if you want to go in there and shoot 15-foot jump shots all night, go ahead. They're going to play the percentages against that and kind of cater towards your shooters, but you're going to get that one shot. I think they'll be a better rebounding team than they've been as well.
Yeah, you guys mentioned it. I think it's offensively, it's going to be, if they can create that first closeout, if they can get by one guy, I mean, you're right. You get so much space. Like one person gets a paint touch and it's over. You're going to be able to get the bucket there. One talking point that someone asked us to discuss was whether or not this would be Jim Boeheim's last season. No, he's going to coach until he's 120. That dude is never going to leave the sideline. He loves it more than anything else. He doesn't have to do anything. He's a king in Syracuse. He's going to be there beyond the grave. He's going to be there beyond the grave. He's never leaving that sideline. All right.
If they didn't take away his wins, remember he lost a couple of wins. Yeah. I thought he was going to wait Coach K out and then just eventually catch and pass Coach K.
I can see him doing that.
So that's what I thought. Yeah, just saying, hey, he's retiring at what number? Yeah, I'm going to coach 3 more years and then I'm going to break Coach K.
Get there. All right. So let's talk about some of these other teams that maybe have a chance to get into the tournament. I don't know. I know T.O. hates NC State. He despises them. He thinks that they're going to finish last in the ACC this season.
That's not what I said.
That's not what I said. I think Miami actually has a chance to be pretty good. Is there anyone else, Georgia Tech, Clemson, anyone else in this conference that you think has a chance to put together kind of a tournament caliber resume or team?
I got 2. I think Georgia Tech could do it. They only lost 2 players, but those 2 players were some of the best players in Georgia Tech history, with Alvarado being ACC Defensive Player in the Year and Moses Wright obviously being Player of the Year in the conference. Like, they lost significant pieces. I love the addition of Davon Smith from Mississippi State coming back home to Atlanta. That's where he's from originally. He brings that quickness to the backcourt, and he's really explosive. It's going to be hard. I think it might take him a second to learn Passner's Princeton. I think like that might take a second for him to do. But, Michael DeVoe is really, really good. I think he's a stud. I don't understand, for the life of me, I can't understand why last year he wasn't like a late first, early second guy. He's got size. He shoots the ball at an incredible clip. Started off slow last year. I think that had a lot to do with Pastner like waiting things out, because he was like, well, we're not going to practice anybody because we have a bunch of guys returning. Now you need that kind of rhythm. And he acknowledged that. So I'm not saying anything out of turn, but they've got pieces. I think, Rodney Howard, is he ready? I don't know. And they have a skilled 7-footer in Sabah Jijabaria. I don't know if that's right, but I tried.
That's a heck of a try, though.
That's a heck of a try. Yeah, I played in Georgia, where he's from. There's a lot of names over there. There's a lot of names, but he's got some skill. He could kind of be that guy, maybe. I mean, it's not easy. I'll tell you, somebody who did explode onto the scene, I thought had a really good season last year, was Jordan Usher. Mm-hmm. Comes back to Georgia after playing at Southern Cal, and I thought, it took him a second to kind of find where he was good, but when he played the 4 and was able to get a rebound and get out and push, that allowed DeVoe to get off the ball, that allowed Alvarado to get off the ball and find spots on the court for open shots. I think they could. And then I think Miami, I pick them every year in like this 5, 6, 7, and they can't stay healthy. Like over the past 3 years, they can't stay healthy. Chris Likes couldn't stay healthy. They lost Rodney Miller Jr. They lost
Earl Timberlake was banged up like that. Yeah, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, they can't stay healthy. They've got good skill. And Isaiah Wong, you want to talk about a pure scorer? We talked about Caleb Mills. Isaiah Wong's in the same conversation. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially coming off ball screens, he gets to his right hand, man. That guy can make some tough shots. And they've relied on a lot of ISO scoring when they have. What's the big kid's name? They're the big white kid from Australia.
The shooter, White and
Wardenberg.
When they have him back on the floor, I think that's going to space some things out more as well. And I think Wong's going to benefit from that. Wooga Poplar is a freshman that has started to get some serious reviews out of Miami. They say he's had an excellent preseason, so we'll see there. They've got talent. Miami's always had talent.
Did you mention Jordan Miller? Jordan Miller, the kid from George Mason, is really good.
He is really good. He is really good. And he's built kind of the same as Anthony Walker, who I think is an excellent talent as well. He just hasn't been able to kind of get over that hump and shoot the ball better. Miami has talent. Can they stay healthy? It's been an issue for 3 years now.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have those lineups where I feel like Jim Laranaga's best teams, you have a really, really good point guard, you have a really, really good 5, and you have like 3 guys that are kind of in that 6'6" kind of wing range. That's what they were when they had Shane Larkin and they won the league. So I can see a little bit of that this season. And yes, I do think that they're underrated. If they stay healthy, that is a team that should be able to get to the NCAA tournament. My biggest question, do we think that Josh Pastner is going to wear the face mask all season again? We're going to do that?
I was calling the game whenever he broke that thing and Teddy V gave him a tech. Like I was calling that game on the radio at Clemson where he slams his mask and got a tech for slamming his mask. Fired me up. I didn't know what to say on the radio. I was like, my man just got a tech for damaging some plastic. It was his own plastic. It was his own property. He looked fantastic.
Hey, don't forget Debo Coleman too. Yep. I think incoming freshman, a highly rated kid, and he's good. I think Debo Coleman is another player that you can add to Georgia Tech. Again, he does a heck of a job with those guys too. I mean, I think he does a really good job. I think he's an underrated guy in that league as far as getting the best out of his talent. I mean, the leadership and toughness you lose with Jose Alvarado and Moses Wright. I don't know how no one can replace those guys. But again, like you said, Mike DeVoe, huge fan. I think should get more. I would expect him to make a leap. They win enough games to get first or second team in the league. We just don't know. I don't see them getting inside that top 6, but they're a potential team to do it. But Debo Coleman is a kid I think that'll play a lot as a freshman and versatile enough to be really effective and help space the floor with them. Like you said, Miami. I like Miami as well. I think the other Walker is going to be a big guy. Charlie Moore is a big name. I think someone to come in and play early with them. And they're always top-loaded with talent. And then, like you said, the injuries have been an issue, but they've always had, a top-level talent that can go out and beat anybody at any given day. I think Walker and Moore are going to be 2 guys that need to stay consistent with Wong. I mean, he can flat out do it. And they just – we just got to see what happened with those guys. They just had a ton of injuries, and it just seemed like it just wasn't going to work. And guys are coming back. They continue to get talent. Magusti's there still, and they're gonna be tough. Their guard play is as good as any in the league.
Yeah, the one team we haven't mentioned yet, NC State. I actually do kind of like them a little bit. I think that they have the kind of roster that Kevin Keatts is going to need to be able to win. I don't know if that's actually going to turn into results on the court, because I felt like the last 2 years they kind of had a similar roster. But I think Casey Morsell, he was really good coming out of high school. I remember really liking him, and it just never, not being able to shoot was just never the right fit at Virginia. And I think having Manny Bates in and around the rim to kind of erase everything there. Thomas Allen's coming back. I think Jericho Helms is a guy that could end up being an all ACC player this year. So I like it on paper. I need to see the results on the court before I can say that, yes, this is a tournament team. But if you look at that roster, it looks pretty good on paper.
I think we all say the same. Yeah, I think we all feel the same. Talent's never been the issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all saying the same thing. I'm sorry. It's been the same. I mean, they're a talented team. They're going to need Cam Hayes to step up and be a little bit better than he was, more consistent as a freshman. I think that we all know the talent's there. He's a big guard, great size, really extra. I mean, he has an extra gear about him that can get anywhere he wants to get on the floor. As he becomes a better shooter, Manny Bates, though, has to stay on the floor. He has to rebound and be a consistent rim protector. He stays in foul trouble. So when he going for every block, he getting in foul trouble. They need him to stay on the floor, because if he's not there, I don't think they have the rim protection, and they're going to press. But being able to press and force turnovers and have Manny on the back end at all costs, if he just walls up and plays, if he can get to 25 to 30 minutes a game, this team could be a team that we can say, all right, it looks like they're finally going to get it. But I think there's a lot of pressure down the road there. I mean, they're going to have to get it done with the success that we're anticipating Duke having and Carolina having. They're going to need to make a push to get into the tournament now. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. They're like that 9th, 10th team right now that we're thinking, hey, they got the talent to be out bottom of the top 6, but will they do it? I don't know. But I think Cam Hayes and definitely Manny Bates are the two guys that have to be more consistent if they're going to accomplish that.
I think Casey Morsell's a stud too. I think he's a good player, and we alluded to this when we were talking about Duke and Jeremy Roach. Like, when he's a bigger part and he's kind of in a flow and in a rhythm, like, maybe he could expand on his role. I think, maybe he struggled with the glacial pace that Virginia played, and maybe trying to play faster at NC State's going to loosen him up a little bit, and he's going to be able to knock down some shots. He's got a good looking shot. It doesn't make sense that he's not making it. He made them in high school. That's kind of the question. Terquavian Smith is a winner. He's a freshman that they got out of Farmville Central. I think he weighs 140 pounds, but he's about 6'3", 6'4". He's super athletic, can shoot the ball. Cam Hayes needs a good year. I think Manny Bates, obviously, is a defensive player of the year. He's my preseason defensive player of the year because he just protects the ball at such an alarmingly high rate, or protects the rim, at such an alarmingly high rate. This team's going to come down to Cam Hayes because NC State is so pick and roll oriented. Everything they do ends up in a ball screen, and most of the time it's Cam Hayes. Now, a year under his belt in the summer to kind of realize some of the reads could help him. But it's been the same story for NC State for, I think, Keatts' tenure. They've had a bunch of guys. They just haven't been able to put it together. But the talent's there. A lot of it's going to come down to Cam Hayes.
All right, so let's end it with this before we get into our teams. We haven't mentioned Clemson. We haven't mentioned Wake Forest. We haven't mentioned Pitt. We haven't mentioned Boston College. Is there any reason to be excited about these teams? And remember, we have a Wake Forest alum on the show, and we have a Clemson alum on the show. So what are you guys thinking about these teams? And is there anyone at the bottom of the league that you think can kind of sneak up? And I remember in Josh Pastner's first year at Georgia Tech, no one thought they were going to be any good. They ended up finishing 500 in the conference and kind of being in the mix for a tournament berth. So is there anyone that can make that kind of a run at the bottom of the league this season?
Go ahead, Randolph.
The silence is definite.
I was waiting on you to say the
silence is definite.
My Tigers.
I'm not going to do that. No. Well, here's the thing, and I have complete faith that Brad Brownell is going to get the absolute most out of the guys he has. Problem is Hunter Tyson's good. Is he first or second best player on a tournament team? Good. Right. And I'm not knocking Hunter. I think Hunter's a good player. I think he's done a fantastic job for what he came in at and how much he's improved. And he's a great rebounder. He's turned into a 40% three-point shooter. They're just going to be so doggone small. And they're going to need PJ Hall to be really, really good. And he didn't get to play a whole lot last year because Amir Sims was there, and him and Amir Sims do a lot of the same things really well. So it was kind of a weird fit whenever they played together. It was difficult because Amir functioned better against opposing fives, and PJ is a five. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. They're going to pressure the ball. They should play faster. I think Nick Honor and Alamir Dawes struggle a little bit scoring in the half court, but as soon as that ball starts to move a little bit up and down the court, that's when Nick Honor gets loose, and that's when Alamir Dawes gets loose. And Nazbo Hannon, Youngstown State transfer, is about 6'5". He's a good player. Had his last game in the Horizon League with a triple-double, but his best attribute is to get a rebound and take off with it and find players on the break, kind of like Dante Grantham was a few years ago, whenever he could get a ball off the defensive glass and then take off and initiate the break himself. I think if there is a team that could get going, and I'm just going to fire up Randolph right here, I think Wake can. I think Jake LaRavia is a stud. I think Davion Williamson was better than what I gave him credit for initially. I think Carter Witt is going to take a massive step because that poor kid went to finish his high school exams in December and then had to play Virginia next week. What are we doing? What are we doing to this young man? I think the summer is going to benefit him a lot. I think he's an excellent passer, one of the best in the conference. You guys brought in some guys that have scored at high levels at other places, and not to mention Dallas Walton. Just guys that are experienced and know how to play. Wake Forest is old. They'll be athletic. They'll be big. They'll be pretty good.
I agree. I think Wake is the team of the bottom teams that we had mentioned. They're the team that could jump to the middle group because of their size, their athleticism. Like you said, they're old. I think they're going to have more interchangeable parts. You know, they may not have the overall talent, like we said, with Duke and the numbers that they have, but they're going to have so many bodies. They're going to be able to throw so many things at you. And tell you about Carter. I felt so bad for that young man last year. I mean,
brutal.
And the truth was, he came in, it was the middle of COVID. I mean, we got shut down last year. I mean, from we played 2 games in November. We didn't play a game in December. So he comes in early and graduates, and it's like, hey, learn these plays, go down here with the walk-ons. Yeah, let's try to get you in shape. Oh, by the way, we're going to Virginia next week, and you're the starting point guard. And like that was how he was thrown into. It was baptism by fire with him. I mean, he was, so he needs to take care of the basketball, and hopefully things slow down for him. But they're going to have so many different moving parts, and Clemson is, you know, Coach Brunell does a heck of a job with those guys. I mean, he's as good a coach as there is in this league. I mean, he has done a heck of a job there in Clemson. I was glad to see that he recently was rewarded with an extension. And so they're going to compete. They're going to play hard. But like you said, when the game slows down, they're going to have a tough time scoring in the half court, I believe. And I think, you know, BC's, you know, Coach Earl's going to be his first year, Earl Grant's first year there. The recruiting's gotten off to a good start. And I don't know if any team has lost more than Pitt has lost as an offseason. I mean, I think they've been decimated with early entries and transfers. And so I think still they have a chance to turn things around. I mean, there's a belief in those guys. I know, you know, with, Judah Mintz committing in 22. So that bodes well for them because it means that people on the outside recruiting wise still believe in them. So I think there's a chance. You know, if you play for Pitt, you're going to have to play hard. You're going to have to compete. So if you do that, you got a chance. And there's enough with Horton and those guys there. They're going to compete and give themselves a chance. I just don't know if they got enough depth on their team to take that step into the middle of the pack.
Yeah, Nike Sabande was really good whenever they let him open up and play. Right. I think, and then Femi Odakali, help me out, man. What are we doing? I gotta get the pronunciation guides.
I was glad. I reward you for trying it.
All right, so I'm just going to go with this. Femi Odakale. I'll do that and just sound it out. I think he has some potential to be really good. They get John Hughley back. They're going to play hard. They're going to play borderline. They're going to do a lot of stuff with their elbows out. I'm not saying that they're necessarily dirty, but that is a tough bunch, and they're going to compete every night. They need to be able to keep their roster intact for the entire season. I think there was a lot to be said for COVID and those guys kind of getting yanked around. Are you practicing? Are you not practicing? On top of that, they weren't really winning, so it was difficult. I think that's going to be interesting enough. Brevin Galloway at Boston College, and I thought that was a nice addition. He's going to be able to help the adjustment process for the players coming up from Charleston. to Boston College with Earl. I think it's going to take him some time, but I think Earl can help them hit their ceiling. I really do. Now, what do I think the investment in Boston College is where it needs to be in order for them to be at the top of the conference? No, but they just agreed to a big practice facility. So there's some movement there. I think that's going to take a while, but those bottom two, I think Judah Mintz is a stud. Whenever they get him, he's an absolute bucket. I loved him whenever we watched him at the EYBL Peach Jam. There's still some movement. There's still hope. I just feel like just Xavier Johnson to Indiana, Adise Tony to Arkansas, Champagne to the draft. Like, there was just too much loss last year for them to really be able to make it up at a high level.
Yeah, that was the class that was supposed to sustain them, right? Like, that was the class coming in. Xavier and that group, they were supposed to be the class to say, hey, they got off to a good start, which has been an MO. They've gotten off to good starts, and then they've kind of faltered as the season gone on. The more it's gone on, they've just kind of come back to the pack. Losing that class, though, that was kind of their first big recruiting class that was supposed to take them to the top of the league. And when you lose that, it makes it tough. So that was the good sign about Judah Mintz coming in, because it shows that there's still some buzz with Pitt and some belief in Pitt. So I think they'll be fine eventually. But they're hitting the reset button, essentially, in a sense, from that standpoint. And
it's unfortunate because he came whenever Stallings struggled. I'm going to put that as nicely as possible. Struggled, didn't win a game in the ACC. And then he wins 3 games his first year, 6 games his second year. Had there not been all kinds of stoppages, he would have been in that 8-9 cusp.
Yes.
And it stinks because, like, they were close, and then they lost the guys that were about to get them there.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see. I think, Capel, obviously, he always has his guys playing really hard. I just think it's going to be difficult for them to take that next step with the current group of guys they have.
Yeah, the one guy I do think is interesting on Pitt that I don't think has been mentioned yet is Jamarius Burton from Texas Tech. I remember when he left Wichita State, I thought that he was going to be really, really good for the Red Raiders, and he just kind of got lost in the shuffle on a team that had a lot of bodies and a lot of moving parts and a lot of players that were probably a little bit more talented than him at that same position. The one good thing you mentioned, Terrence, PJ Hall is back and playing. I was a little worried that he wasn't going to survive that dunk from Jalen Johnson last year, so it's good to see that he's still up alive and moving on, on 2 feet. All right, let's get into our player of the year. And our
just let that go. We could have just let that go off into the wind. Do you remember who Randolph Childress crossed over and then told him?
Oh my!
No, you don't.
Jeff McGinnis. I know exactly who that was.
How dare you? You brought up.
I watched. Look. I'm a big film guy. I watched that tape to get ready for this podcast, just so I had it fresh in my mind. So yeah, that was great. I do have to get the story about this. Was this like a common thing for you? Whatever you made?
No, you know what? They beat us early in the year, and as you know, if anyone knows Jeff's a talker, right? He's going to talk trash. And the difference is from now back then, we could talk trash to each other, and there were no technicals, none of that. So they had beaten us early in the year at our place, and then they came back, and Donald Williams hits a shot, and they beat us. And the next day, he makes a quote in the paper, and he's like, "We knew if we kept it close, they'd choke." And I was furious. I was like, "All right, you know what? When we get them, wait till we play them again." And we didn't play them till our second to last game of the year in Chapel Hill, and we beat them. And then, the tournament was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it was less than a week later we had played them again. And that was just a tournament game. And he just brought the best out in me. And I was like, I'm going to go at him. I didn't think anything about the shot. When I shot it, it was just about telling him, I'm going at you all night. So when he fell, I didn't even remember doing that as much as I remember the late, great Dean Smith yelling in my ear, "He can't do that. That's taunting." I'm running down the court. That's my biggest memory of that moment.
Oh man, that's great. That's great. All right, let's get into our player of the year and our all conference teams. I have Paolo Banchero win player of the year in the conference. I think that he has a chance to win national player of the year this season. I'm very high on that kid. Do you guys have anything else?
No, I think that being compounded with Coach K's last season, every game is going to be, there's going to be such a spotlight. He's going to be the best player on the team that's getting that's getting all the attention. Excuse me. He's so good, 20-10, easy, and he's developed so much as a passer. I think, he's just going to be the focal point on a really good team, and he's going to be one of the best players in the country.
I couldn't agree more with you. The only other person I may add, just because of depending on where they finish, I think Armando Bacot can I think he's going to be a double-double guy, right? And then the other guy, I told you guys before, the other guys, Caleb Mills. If Florida State finishes in that top half of the league or the top 2 or 3 and the numbers that he can put up being a go-to guy, I think it's a three-man race for player of the year. But if I had to guess, I think we're all agreeing it's going to be the Dookie.
Are we forgetting Kive Aluma? Are we forgetting?
I have first team. I have Kive first team. My first team is Buddy Boeheim, Caleb Mills, Kive Aluma, Paolo Banchero, and I went with Caleb Love. I think Caleb Love is going to have that breakout year, and I do think that when you are a point guard and putting up big numbers, you're going to get a lot more attention than a big guy putting up big numbers, especially in a league where Paolo and Keve Aluma, I think, are probably going to be the 2 best big guys. That's why I went with him over Armando for first team, but I have Armando on my second team, preseason All ACC team.
My first team, besides Banchero, I got Aluma second. Buddy Boeheim, obvious. I think that's an obvious choice after the postseason he had. Armando Bacot, as much as it pains me to put a North Carolina guy on the first team, I did it. And then not Caleb Mills, but I went Isaiah Wong. I think he's going to be relied on so heavily. His numbers are just going to be astronomical. So I think he's going to be really good. Yeah, I'll let you go before I get to my second team, Coach.
I got Buddy Boeheim, Armando, Caleb Mills, Olive. I think Armando over Love because Carolina's system is just inside out. He's just going to get more touches. He's going to go to glass. I think Love is going to have a great year. I just think the ball will touch Armando's hands so many more times. I mean, that's just the way they play. They're going to play inside out. As much success as their guards have had over the years, it's just going to touch the big guy's hands way too many times. So his numbers will be great. And we talked about Paulo. I think those guys. So we got the same group. I think Caleb is one, but of the Carolina guys, I think Armando will be the guy.
Second team, I got Prentice Hub. As my first guy on the second team. Caleb Mills is there as well. I think Manny Bates, his defensive presence is going to be hard to ignore, so I got him there as well. Jalen Withers and Michael DeVoe from Georgia Tech. I think all 5 of those guys will have excellent years. I think Jalen Withers is going to be able to operate a lot more with so much shooting on the floor at Louisville. I think he's going to have a really good year after being an all-freshman last season. So I like Withers' game. A little undersized at the 5, but at the same time, he was able to knock down some jump shots as well. I think he's a really talented young man.
Yep,
I had the same group except Prentice. I had Wong instead of Prentice Hub. I struggled with that because I'm a huge Prentice Hub fan. But I think, like you said, Wong's going to have a great year. I didn't put him on first team because I just think they're not going to win enough games. But I had him on second team.
Yeah, I had Prentice Hub on the second team as well. I had Kihei Clark there. I just feel like Virginia's going to be really good. He's probably going to be their most noteworthy player. And it's just, it's one of those things. You're a senior. You've done as much as he's done during his career. It's going to be kind of a career achievement award. And then Wong and DeVoe and Bacot round out my second team. One guy I do think will be interesting to see is Samuel Williamson at Louisville. There's been a lot of talk coming out of Louisville about him changing the shot and being more of a set shooter on 3-pointers. And I think if he can kind of add that to his, he's a really good mid-range shooter. If you can kind of add that, the stretch out to the 3-point line with the way he can defend and especially the way that he can rebound, I think he's a guy that we could end up seeing average 13 and 8 on a tournament team, a top 25 team for Louisville. And if that happens, that should probably get you in the mix for second team, third team, all conference, whatever it ends up being. But listen, gentlemen, we've been here for way too long.
We went long.
Yeah, we went long. We went long. So for Terrence Oglesby and for Randolph Childress, my name is Rob Doster. Thanks for watching the ACC preview on the Field of 68.